These Stone Age tombs were interpreted by later Celtic peoples as gateways to the other world, the realm of the gods and the dead. The Celts would place the cremated remains of their dead at the entrance in readiness for the journey into the other world. Portal tombs were also woven into myth as beds of passion for the eloping lovers Dermot and Grania. Over time, their association with this lusty myth has spawned a modern superstition. Folklore has it that throwing a pebble onto the capstone will forecast romance.
The story is, if one of 3 tries, you manage to get a stone to stay up on top. In one version, you're going to be married within the year. In the second version, you get a wish to come true. Now, because it's involved with marriage, I think this may be a memory of some sort of a fertility thing, and Dermot and Grania used to sleep there. And so I think they may be connected somehow in the folk subconscious.
Dermot and Grania, still pursued by Finn and the Fianna, cross the Irish Sea and head for the Scottish Highlands. Scotland is a land of rolling glens and deep lochs, rich in Celtic history, mythology, language and legend. Dermot gets his comeuppance in Scotland, fighting the supernatural boar of Glenelg. This tiny bronze figure dating from the Iron Age was found in the Celtic margins of East Anglia. It's archaeological evidence of the Celts' belief in the supernatural power of boars. They would venerate boars and pigs as sacred creatures, and they are often found depicted in Celtic artwork as well as in myth.
The boar charged. Dermot threw a spear. He gave the boar a mortal wound. The boar was able to come on and give Dermot a mortal wound. Dermot lay on the ground, bleeding. Fionn McCool and the rest of the Fianna came around. Fionn looked down and said, "Ah, Dermot, if Grania could see you now."
Finn has the supernatural power to save Dermot by bringing him water cupped in his hands. But jealousy overcomes him and he hesitates twice, with Dermot's life slipping away from him.
At this point, the rest of the Fianna said, "Fionn, get water quickly or we'll kill you." Fionn went down, brought back more water. But by the time he reached Dermot, Dermot was dead. And even Fionn's power couldn't bring him back to life.
The myth is firmly rooted in the Celtic landscape. Many Highland peaks in Scotland claim to be Dermot's death place, but then, so do dozens of other places around the Celtic world, like the mountains around Sligo in Ireland. So many of Ireland's historical places are steeped in ancient myth. Rathcrohan, or Maeve's Fort in Roscommon, is now in farmland but was an ancient coronation and burial place of the kings of Connacht. It's a ring borough, one of 60 national monuments in the area and part of one of Europe's most important archaeological sites. Tara was the seat of the High Kings of Ireland in the first millennium AD. Navan Fort, or Owen Macha, ancient capital of the Kings of Ulster, is another important royal site. Though Stone Age, it was adopted as a place of worship in the Iron Age and is named after a Celtic myth, the Twins of Macha.
The site itself is not a true fort in the sense of defence. The earthworks around the site would appear to suggest that it was more of a religious site. During excavations of the large mound on top of the fort, the archaeologists revealed traces of a giant structure, which it has been suggested it was a giant Celtic temple. It was built on top of the site around about 95 BC. When you go up there and you stand on top of the mound, you get a very good idea of why the site was chosen. There is a fantastic view of the whole surrounding countryside. It's a legendary landscape.
In Celtic times, this landscape was of great importance. Here there was a royal enclosure similar to other royal sites. It must have been a spiritual, political and cultural centre. Rich artefacts were found here, weapons, jewellery, but also the remains of animal and human bone, which can only point to it being a place of sacrifice. Some believe that the Celtic Druid priesthood demanded blood sacrifice as offerings to the gods. At Awan Macha, archaeologists have found animal bones deposited ritualistically, the bones of particular animals that were thought by the Celts to have supernatural powers: bulls, horses, dogs.
Animal sacrifice was probably quite a common practice in the later Iron Age. There are particular bones, like for example horse skulls, which are just put in the bottom of a pit. This doesn't look like simple rubbish disposal. It looks as though it's the result of ritual activity, ritual feasting, which probably involved the sacrifice of animals.
Animal remains found ritually buried were often cattle, sheep, deer, the main food animals, killed to feed the gods.
People believed that animals had knowledge that human beings don't have because of the way animals are constructed. They can maybe run faster, they can fly, they can burrow under the ground. They see life differently. So people believed that they could learn from animals. One of the ways of learning from animals was to become an animal or to take on the essence of an animal spirit. Shamans in particular did this, wearing a skin or the horns of an animal. And that allowed the practitioner to take on the essence of the animal that he or she was wearing.
The idea of these rituals was to allow the shaman to magically become the animal, to transfer from the human world to the animal world, where the supernatural might be understood. In one ritual, a bull was killed, and either the flesh was chewed or the hide placed in the ground. A druid would sleep in this hide, and in this sleep he would have sacred and important visions, visions used to prophesy and to predict the new king. Archaeological digs at the ancient religious site of Awan Macha in Ireland's Ulster have turned up horse bones and are evidence that animal sacrifice took place here. Horses were used as sacrifices, probably because of their high value. They are also often depicted in Celtic art, which indicates their importance. This bronze horse's head, found in North Yorkshire, dates from the Iron Age and was probably an ornamental chariot decoration.
Horses would have been particularly important for transport, for battle, but also for prestige, because horses are expensive to maintain. Therefore, the ownership of a horse would immediately give you status and prestige, and that, I think, feeds through into myths associated with horses.
One such myth is set at Awan Macha and gives the site its name. Macha was a Celtic goddess who appeared in several guises: a war goddess, a sensual mother goddess, and a horse goddess. Her association with horses supports the archaeological evidence of this as a place of animal worship and sacrifice. Macha's story is one that the locals, including storyteller Francis Quinn, know well.
Cronach, son of Agnovan of the Uli, was a wealthy man with many lands. He lived in the mountains and in the wilderness. One day, a woman appeared to Cronach, and to him she seemed beautiful. She set about the tasks of the house as if she'd always been there. That night, she came to Cronach's bed, and she stayed for a long time afterwards. And in time, she grew big with child.
High kings ruled from Awan Macha during the Iron Age. People would have gathered here from the neighbouring large rural community for religious and civic festivals. Feasting, storytelling, sacrifice and combat would have been part of the celebrations. Horse races may also have taken place, and in the myth set here, it's a horse race that is the climax. Though she's heavily pregnant with twins, Macha is ordered to race the king's horses.
And at the end of the day, the king's horses came on the field, and the great race took place. And the king's horses were victorious. "No one can run as fast as the king's horses," cried the crowd. "My wife can run as fast as the king's horses," said Cronach. And he was brought before the king, and his wife was sent for. "A misfortune that I have to go now, that I'm about to give birth," she said. Misfortune or no, replied the messenger, if you do not come, Cranach will die. And she went before the king, and her labour pains seized her. Help me, she said to the crowd. A woman bore every one of you. Wait until I've given birth. But she failed to move them. Well then, a greater evil will come upon you, and it will afflict the Ully for a long time. Who are you? Asked the king. My name and the name of my children will mark this ground forever. I am Macha.
Macha raced and won. Her twins were instantly born, but Macha died. In her last breath, she cursed the men of Ulster. Her curse is said to have damned the politically unstable region of Ulster to this day. Cornwall, on the westernmost tip of England, is a traditionally Celtic region. Many Cornish people feel more Celtic than British. Proud, beautiful and remote, Cornwall is a sacred, inspirational place drenched in myth and legend, stories of supernatural creatures, magical kings, stirring romances. The Cornish are proud of their pagan Celtic roots, and the ancient beliefs live on.
Right, let the sun dance begin.
Modern druids, such as Ed Prynne, self-appointed archdruid of Cornwall, worship Celtic gods around stones that are anything but ancient. Formerly a stonemason, Ed crafted these monoliths as copies of Cornish sacred stones. It's a celebration of being a Cornishman and a Celt.
These stones I've got here are replicas of the most famous and visited stones in Cornwall. Let me say first, I believe in Allah, I believe in Merlin, and I believe in Jesus. Merlin, he was a local guy. The other two live a lot farther away from us.
Such veneration of Celtic figureheads and traditions is found all over Cornwall. Ceremonies reflecting this are expressions of a firm commitment to a romantic image. The ancient Celtic religious priesthood comprised of various factions, including the bards. Bards were storytellers, responsible for handing down history. These contemporary Cornish bards still celebrate their traditions at this annual gathering. Here elders from across the region come to promote their culture, speak their ancient language and encourage Cornish Celtic art and storytelling. One ancient Cornish story, kept alive by modern bardic storytellers, is now appreciated worldwide. It's a Celtic tale of sexual infidelity, the myth of Tristan and Isolde. It's been reinterpreted in opera, poetry, storytelling and in romantic art. A recent version tells of Tristan, a young Cornish prince, who accepts the challenge to fight an invincible Irish warrior, the Moorholt.
Now the Moorholt raised his sword and strode directly at Tristan. Quickly lifting his shield, Tristan staggered sideways under the terrific impact of the Moorholt's attack. A second and third stroke rained down on him, now on his knees, now scrabbling to defend himself. Just as Tristan regained his feet, the Moorholt's sword found flesh. The young man's cry of pain and the clash of metal echoed across the water to the ears of those who waited. The hushed crowd watched with dread, but it was Tristan, who stood proudly, clutching his injured arm and calling, "I have delivered Cornwall's tribute to Ireland."